Hello and welcome to the show today. I'm really glad you could join us. So today we're talking about, well, a lot of cool things, including how to retire like the way you want to retire. But we're talking about a lot of other things along the way, including inflation, which we all really need to know about as entrepreneurs, because this can have a big impact on what's going on and how it affects us. So with us today is Mark Singer. Now, as president of Safe Harbor Retirement Planning, Mark has served as a relentless retirement guide to thousands of individuals since 1986. The secret to his longevity has been asking the questions other advisors simply don't ask. It allows him to make the best decisions for each client's unique situation, ensure in retirement success. Now, Mark's a former radio talk show host, an author, and has become the go-to financial educator in the media as well. His most recent book, Don't Outlive Your Money in Retirement, 7 Key Steps, unveils the step-by-step process used to help maximize the retirement journey. Mark has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, abcnews.com, foxnews.com, and Bloomberg Radio, as well as locally Boston on NECN and WRKO. And he's also a multi-year recipient of Boston's Magazine's 5-Star Wealth Manager Award. Mark, welcome back to the show today.
Hi, thanks.
Well, I'm glad you can be here, man. I've got a lot of questions because a lot's changed since last time we talked. And let's dive in with like the big overwhelming topic right now in the finance world, which is inflation. Talk to me a little bit. What's your perspective on what's happening right now with inflation?
So particularly as it applies to those who are closing in or already into retirement, it really impacts them at a number of different levels. So let's talk about a bit about what's happening with inflation and why we're having it. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I go out to shop, not a lot of inventory in the stores and the prices are higher, all because of that lovely term, supply chain. I know that when we were in the midst of the summer, our boat needed power steering fluid. And I went to the local store, which typically has like 12 or 15 different providers of power steering fluid. And it had one offering, take it or leave it. And that was all about the supply chain. I mean, it's just, I broke an 8-iron. Don't ask me how I did it on the golf course. But the shaft is going to take 1 year for it to get to me. I mean, it's crazy. So it's impacting us at so many different levels. And therefore, the whole supply demand thing, prices are going up. Try getting some wood, try getting some appliances, try, when you're doing the improvements on the house. I mean, we got a call from my stepdaughter. She was in the midst of doing the house, and it was going to cost her an extra $30,000 above and beyond what they thought they were going to have to spend because of the inventory and the prices. So it's impacting us at so many different levels. But I think there's some good news. I think the term is transitory. What does that mean? It's not permanent. All right. So the real question is, how long is it going to be here? I guess it depends on the people that you talk to, but my take is, and the consensus that I hear is, we're going to be seeing this type of inflation for probably about another 12 months or thereabouts. And then hopefully the supply chain issues will be taken care of. Inflation will come down a little bit. I will tell you, on the other end of it, I did talk to a portfolio manager who told me he thought the supply chain was completely broken, and he thought it'd be another 5 years before we got out of this. I think he's on the outside of that bell curve, but I do think it's about a year. But the silver lining in it really is, for those who are collecting or about to collect, Social Security. So Social Security's increases are really a Polaroid snapshot, boy, does that date me, right? Of what the CPI is in the third quarter of that particular year. So in this particular year, in the third quarter, they took a look at what the CPIW was year over year, and they found it was a 5.9% increase over the year before, which means that for the first time in 39 years, we had the highest cost of living adjustment that will be initiated for 2022. which is good news because Social Security's cost of living increases is probably averaged about 1.5% for each of the last 15 years, which has been well below what we've been spending, what the real inflationary impact has been. And my sense is that we should get a similar type of cost of living for 2023 as well. So that's good news for those who are dependent upon that Social Security income. And even for those who are closing in on taking Social Security, it's good too, because if you've hit your full retirement age, call it 66 or 67, and you decided to defer taking your Social Security benefit, you not only get that 8% guarantee, but you also get what the cost of living adjustment is. So for those who deferred it for next year, they're in essence getting a 13.9% increase year over year for that 1 year on what the benefits would be. So that's sort of like a silver lining on what's happening.
So with inflation, what do we expect? I mean, because you talk about two things, right? Supply chain disruption, obviously, with everything that's happened with the pandemic. And then we talk about inflation. Well, when we look at the cost of things and the cost of goods and so many cost of a lot of things that we're buying increase, what is it? Is it inflation? Is it a supply chain issue? Is it both?
I think for the most part, it's a supply chain issue. When you talk about fuel, when you talk about automobiles, when you talk about anything that has to do with chips, commodities, those prices have skyrocketed. And I don't believe anybody believes that is sustainable at any level. And then what happens is, again, my 8-iron, I mean, my shaft is going to take a year to get here. So that's happening all over the place. Try to buy a particular kind of refrigerator, if you're doing a kitchen makeover. So I think it's going to be tough over the next year or so. And the CPI-U, which is another inflationary index, was showing somewhere in the vicinity of about a 5 to 6% overall inflation number, but they broke it down into about 20 different sectors. Some were very high, 30, 40% increases. Some were lower. But for the person who's in or entering into retirement, one of the things that we really have to take into account is the healthcare. Now, there's no supply and demand per se for that, but we all know that those costs are increasing at a rate higher than whatever the inflationary benchmark is. So for those in retirement, it's a scary time. They're no longer contributing to something that will be a nest egg. They already have the nest egg. And more importantly, for those who are invested, looking to generate income for their retirement. So I'll tell you a story. My father-in-law, he's 89 years old, still plays tennis 7 days a week. He's unbelievable. He's actually the commissioner of both the league down in Florida and up here in Massachusetts. He's unbelievable. But he retired at the age of 53. And for the past 36 years, he's been invested in municipal bonds, nothing else. The greatest bond bull market in our history. Well, we had lunch at the Cheesecake Factory this summer, and he said that for the first time in his retirement, he was now moving some of these matured bonds into a basket of dividend yielding stocks because there is no interest available. And more importantly, if he were to buy these bonds at the low rates that they are in an interest rate environment that is certainly going to go up, the value of those bonds is going to go down. So it's a real conundrum for those who are investing for income right now. I mean, I get lots of calls from my clients with regards to what do I do with this CD that came due or this bond that was matured. It's like, I can't give them a good answer because there isn't one. We don't want to, be seduced by these markets, which have been, at record highs for the past year and a half. We don't expect that to continue, and you don't want to put that safe money at risk. So you really have to tread lightly with cash available, and there's really nothing wrong with, at this point, just putting it in, under the mattress and just, waiting for a more advantageous time.
What's your feedback on what's happening with the real estate market?
So, for those of us who own homes and, we have no intention of selling right now, I mean, it's been quite a boon. A lot of equity in my house, much more than what it was a couple of years ago. I think that it has set a higher floor. In other words, I do think that there will be many markets where the pricing just went up too fast, too high, too quickly, and it will come down a bit, maybe in a year or two, again, when interest rates start to move back up. But I think the floor is higher now. I think the lows are going to be higher. And, particularly down in Florida, Miami area, my goodness, I don't think that there will be some sort of a bubble, but the construction is just unbelievable. And it's happening in many places around the country. So obviously real estate is very local. So it all depends where you are. But I think that for most of us, it's been a really good thing. Again, these interest rates, and it's interesting too. So one of the things we talk about when I do my videos on the YouTube channel, and for anyone who's interested, they can go to Your Retirement Authority. That's my YouTube channel. And we talk a lot about, as you enter into retirement, what is it that makes those satisfied and happy versus those who are not? And that's a many level answer to that. But one of the big studies that came out from employee benefits research was that many folks who are finding themselves not happy in retirement are those who are facing a lot of debt. And it's really about how you manage that debt. And at this point in time, particularly as we look to interest rates that more than likely the next big move is up, if you have variable interest rates, and part of that is your mortgage, possibly, or some of the credit cards you may have, to really look to pay them down as much as possible. However, with regards to the mortgage, I used to counsel people that, when it was 6 and 7%, go ahead and if you have free cash flow, pay it down a little bit. But now that interest rates are at 2 point something or 3 point something and it's tax deductible, I say if you have extra cash flow, pay down the credit card debt, at 12, 15, 18%. I mean, I think that's really important in this day and age. So, I mean, there's so many different levels of, what we have to tackle in terms of retirement. And I think it's we talk a lot about the money and the investments, but I think our industry's really done a lousy job of preparing most people for retirement.
Your book is phenomenal. Can we dive in and talk a little bit about these 7 steps that you think are essential to having a sound retirement?
Yeah, again, on the YouTube channel, I say it over and over again. I think our industry's done a lousy job. I think that the advertisements, the commercials, the messaging is all about he who has the most money, can buy the most toys and they'll be the happiest in retirement. That's not always the case. And I think that we have to focus on a handful of the financial things that are really important, but also the non-financial. And one of the biggest questions we start with up front with our clients, there's 2 things that I think that sort of makes it different with our conversation with our clients and many of the other folks in this industry. First, we don't talk about investments or portfolios for quite some way down the road. First thing we talk about is, what is your cash flow need? And cash flow is going to drive everything in the planning. Because once you determine what your cash flow need is, then you can back into how much risk you need to take with your portfolio. Most people don't know how much risk they need to take. They took on a fair amount of risk, hopefully, when they were accumulating assets, but that all changes when you go to retire and you move into the distribution stage. Now it's about income and preservation. So you have to have a certain level of risk in order to generate the income you need, but you also are hoping to maintain that principle that you have. The other question that we deal with our clients, and it's the non-financial one, is what am I going to do the rest of my life? And certainly I don't have the answer to that one, but it has to be dealt with before you go to retire. And this is what we talk about with our clients who are 3 to 5 years from retirement. You must have a conversation with your spouse or partner in advance of retirement. What's it going to look like? What are the roles that each of you are going to be taking? The gray divorce is the #1 percentage increase in the divorce field versus every other age right now. And a lot of it has to do with, oh my gosh, he or she is home now. I signed up, for better or for worse, but not for lunch every day. So, it can really be tough on a relationship when really for the past 40 years, you sort of were passing each other in the night or having dinner with each other. So it changes a lot. I have one client, all he wants to do is just sit on the beach down in Naples 24/7. I have others who want to do more in their life and be more rewarded and fulfilled. This is a part of the overall planning process and a part of the 7 steps that we talk about that are so crucial to setting up whatever your goals are so that you can pursue a successful retirement.
What do you think when it comes to retirement? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make where they are outliving their money?
So it's a great one. And Social Security is the biggest mistake I think people make. A recent study came out that said almost half of the people who were eligible to take Social Security right off the bat at age 62 did so. And when you talk about outliving your money, United Income did a study a couple of years ago that suggested that 96% of people took money at the wrong time. They said a majority of people should probably take it approaching 70, but 43% of people should take it before 70. The conclusion was that if you took it at the right time, your increase in your late 70s and 80s would amount to almost 25% annual basis if you took it at the right time versus taking it at age 62. Now, there are certain circumstances, usually driven by health more than anything else, that maybe 62 is right, or if your life expectancy is such that it's going to be impacted and you're not married. If you're single and you have a health issue, take it as early as you can. But if you're married and your spouse is going to be dependent upon your work record, you may be better off waiting till as long as possible to take it so you can make sure your surviving spouse is going to be taken care of. So I think Social Security is a big one that people make a lot of mistakes about. I think the whole investment process is very sketchy. Again, I think the industry's done a lousy job. They keep telling you, outperform the indexes. You need this, you need that. You don't. Most of my when we do the planning, we need 3, 5, 6% in terms of total return over their retirement life period. And that's a lot different than when I see what they have in their 401k when they go to roll it over, where they have 70, 80, 90% in equities. So very often you can take down the risk if you have done the planning, and in so doing, feel a little bit more comfortable about spending money.
How does Social Security work? And what I mean by that is, how do they determine how much money I will get? And so I will get in retirement age, because for example, if somebody's making $500,000 a year versus somebody making 25,000, there's got to be some cap, right? Can you earn so much to a level and then you never go beyond that level of what you'll make through Social Security?
Yeah, so let's back up for a moment and talk about Social Security for a moment in terms of one of the fears that people have, which is it's quote unquote going bankrupt. And that's really a misnomer to a degree. with the recent inflation increase for the cost of living at 5.9%, the trustees also released a report that said Social Security would not be able to pay out 100% of its guarantees past the year of 2033. It used to be 2034, but this year they moved it back to 2033. So what they're saying is, if nothing is to be done, there are no changes made at any level, then in the year 2033, it's projected that Social Security will be able to pay out 80% of the guarantees they've been offered. So that feeds into what the question you just asked in terms of maximum earnings that you could have, and what is the limitation? Because one of the solutions or one of the band-aids, if you will, is increasing that earnings limit so that more taxes could be taken in to pay out more people for a longer period of time. I think that
Can I ask you a real quick question, Mark? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to go back to that and to go back to that myth, I'd always heard that the Social Security was its own fund, right? Separate from everything else.
Yes.
Then the government's decided to open it up and multi-purpose the use of those funds for other things. Is that accurate or is that not true?
Well, it's all behind the scenes, okay? I mean, it all depends who you read and who's talking to. What we do know is that the demographics are such that they're now having more money being basically spent on benefits than there are taxes being brought in.
To generate, okay.
That's the big thing. That's the big takeaway. And that's where we're moving to this trend where 2033, if nothing changes, then we're going to have an issue.
Sure.
But they could raise, you could eliminate cost of living. So if you think about that for a moment, think of Social Security as a pension. Do pensions get cost of living increases? Typically not. Why would Social Security do it? So there's one possibility. They could raise full retirement age. So right now, if you're born between 1940 and 1953, you have a full retirement age of 66. If you're born 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67, and anything in between. So in other words, I'm 1955. My full retirement age is 66 and 2 months. Now you asked about the formula. We're not going to get into that, but because it's too complicated, and it'll be a deer in the headlights for me. I'll get an ice cream headache for that one. But basically, if you think about full retirement age, that's the benchmark number, the PIA, the primary insurance amount that they gauge how much you're going to get. So for those who have put in their 35 years and they've maxed out at the levels and they reach their full retirement age, they can expect somewhere in the vicinity of approximately, let's call it $3,100 a month if they take their benefit at full retirement age. So let's use that as the benchmark. If you take it early, I call it the penalty phase, then they'll reduce your benefit, at some level. If you take it before, let's call it 66 or 67. However, if you go to the bonus phase and defer your benefit up to age 70, you get an automatic 8% increase plus whatever cost of living adjustment there is. So you can have all sorts of degrees. There's 567 different claiming strategies on Social Security, and it's confusing as all heck. And the Social Security Administration personnel is not allowed, and they shouldn't be allowed, to give planning advice. They can just tell you what the numbers are.
Right.
So when you go to look at this stuff, you can certainly go online. And oh, by the way, one tip for your listeners, if they haven't gone online and signed on or registered for My Statement, it's www.ssa.gov/My Statement. The purpose of going onto My Statement really is twofold. One, to get a sense of what it is that you are going to be owed. It used to be Social Security would send statements to everybody, then they sent it to nobody, and now they send it to only those people who are over the age of 60 but haven't yet claimed their Social Security. So you can go on at whatever age and figure out what your Social Security benefit would be. But the bigger point, Ty, is We've all heard about Social Security numbers being hacked. If you go on to My Statement and register, you've put a stake in the ground that this is my Social Security number. And it makes it very difficult for anybody to steal it. And once you go on, you can also see if anybody else is claiming benefits off of your number. So whether you're 65 or 51 or whatever your number is, just go on. It takes you about 5 minutes to figure out how to get on. It's really pretty easy. You'll just change your password every once in a while. But that's an important part with regards to Social Security.
So, and I love that. And I'm actually here right now trying to navigate this just because I haven't looked at this in a while. So let me ask you this then. How much you get in Social Security isn't really directly affected by how much I put in?
Yes. Well,
we talk about the 3,100 plus, like if
the more you earned up to the limit, the more money will be available to you. So if I earned, the equivalent, let's call it inflation of $150,000 a year, we'll just use that as a number, versus someone who is making $25,000 a year, I will certainly be entitled to more of a Social Security benefit who only was eligible to a level of much lower income. So you max out at about $3,100, but the average is closer to about $2,000 a month for most people.
Yeah, and again, depending on when you take it, which makes a ton of sense.
Right.
What else? What's your, as we got a handful of minutes left, what are your, some of the best tips you can give of what we should do now? Because a lot of, the listeners here are 30s, 40s, 50s, entrepreneurs, not putting a lot into Social Security. A lot of them are 1099 even still. What type of things should we be doing so we don't outlive our money?
I think one of the greatest, again, going back to the messaging that our industry puts out, you need $1.5 million to retire. Well, if I don't have $1.5 million and I'm struggling, I'm going to listen to that and go, are you kidding? I'm just not going to deal with it. Versus trying to teach those who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s the importance of putting small pieces of money away over a long period of time. Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world, particularly if you can use it in a tax-deferred vehicle like a SEP or a Roth or an IRA or a 401k. So, we've done studies over and over again that show, if you started at the age of 20 versus starting at the age of 28, listen to this for a second, putting away $2,000 a year. If all you did was put it away for 8 years, starting at 20 and stopping at 28, you put in $16,000 versus waiting to 28 and investing for the next 39 years, you put in $78,000. So assuming a 9% rate of return, no guarantees for any future performance, the person who put in $16,000 outperformed by $80,000 the person who invested for 39 years. It's the power of compounding. It's the power of tax deferral. So if the greatest message I can give those who are in their 30s or 40s is don't wait. Even if you can accelerate your savings when you get to your mid 50s, it isn't going to do a bit of difference. It'll just be putting money in. You're not going to get really the benefit of time on your side and compounding. So do whatever you can to put small pieces in. It's more about the discipline. And more than that, I do a lot of speaking nationally on financial wellness and financial literacy. Every person I get in front of, I talk to them about talking to their kids. If we can provide more financial awareness and literacy, if we can show the kids that putting away $1 a week or $10 a month and mom and dad match some number of it, and then have that $200 or $250 go into some fund that's invested in the stock market, we can get these kids to really create their own wealth and take us off of the hook and not be their ATM for the rest of our lives.
Mark, great advice today. There's so many things I'd like to talk to you about, but we don't have the time to jump into it all. But a lot of people would like to hear more from you. So where can everybody go to learn more?
So they can certainly go to our YouTube channel, Your Retirement Authority. And also, if you are wondering how prepared you are for retirement, we actually developed a very quick 2-minute quiz from the recent book. And that's over at www.retirenowquiz.com. Retire Now Quiz. Once you fill it out, it takes you 2 minutes. We'll get you a quick score on which of the 3 retirement preparedness stages you're in. A free chapter of my book and worksheets so that you're a little bit more clear on where you are as it stands with regards to your own retirement.
All right, perfect. Mark, thanks again for coming on with us today.
Ty, thanks for having me.
All right. So listen, if you really want to dive in and see if you're ready for retirement, it's really easy to do. All you have to do is go take a simple quiz, and the quiz is at retirenowquiz.com. That's retirenowquiz.com. I'm also going to go ahead and put a link to Mark's YouTube channel here, as well as that link to my statement as well, which I already really quick logged in just to tell you it's super simple. And it's cool because it shows you exactly what Mark says. If you take it early, you take it on point, and then if you take it delayed, what your expected income is going to be. So make sure you take those steps right now, especially see if you're ready for retirement. A really cool quiz right here. All you have to do is go visit retirenowquiz.com and see where you are on the path of retirement. And that'll also give you some insight on talking to Mark and his team about what you could do to get on the right path, especially if you're not on it now. So make sure you visit retirenowquiz.com. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.